This changes everything for the Toronto Maple Leafs as we have multiple new reports revealing some huge information as it pertains to Brad Treliving's trade deadline plans. His trades are falling like crazy across the NHL, and one recent trade in particular changes the landscape of what Brad Treliving is going to do. We're going to break that down as well as discuss multiple new reports that have dropped, revealing the latest news surrounding Treliving's plans and the Leafs plans in general. But before we get into all that, folks, quick reminder, hit that subscribe button. If you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. We're on the road to 16,000 subscribers. So you want to help us towards that goal and you're enjoying the up-to-date coverage, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Darius, since our last video earlier today on Yanni Gourde, a bunch of moves have went down. One move in particular, obviously, that changes the landscape of Brad Treliving and puts an immense amount of pressure on Treliving himself. And let's dive right into it. So following our video earlier this morning, a report dropped from Frank Saravalli giving the latest news, how their top objective is a third-line center and that the ideal fit is Yanni Gourde in the Seattle Kraken. And then we were going to, of course, cover that and discuss. We did cover that earlier this morning on Yanni Gourde. Right after that, we have a big move that drops, and it is surrounding the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that is on the Leafs' tail, and the Kraken. So it's a multiple big deal here. And the biggest thing is, basically, it was Yanni Gourde, Bjorkstrand, a 5th-round pick for 2 firsts, a second, and a prospect player as well. So this is very, very interesting. Now, Tampa Bay doesn't own their next first-round pick till 2028, but you're giving up, well, the Bolts gave up 2 first-round picks in order to get, albeit not just Yanni Gourde, but Oliver as well, as a very solid player and could have helped the Leafs team, although they have a bit of a logjam at the forward position. This is very interesting now, and the pressure is on for Brad Treliving.
This is kind of what I was talking about in our video earlier. I'm not sure certain trades for certain teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning are available for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think that this trade was available for the Leafs because they're not going to take on Bjorkstrand, right? At second line center because they don't need a second line center, or not second line center, excuse me, second line right wing, because the Leafs don't need one. So I'm not sure if there was a trade available for the Leafs, or maybe, the price was too high to pay, because this is on paper, whatever you want to call it, a massive, massive overpay for Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand. But it doesn't matter for the Tampa Bay Lightning because they're all in, and they're always all in. They haven't had a first round pick since 2020, and they're not going to have a first round pick until 2028. So they do not care. They're all in. So that, a lot of what's happening right now is starting to shift my focus to Brad Treliving and what is he going to do and what is he doing right now? Because you look at a team like Tampa, that I do still think that the Leafs can beat Tampa, but you never know. And they're making moves, right? And they're making moves to ensure that they can make the playoffs and that they can do some damage in the playoffs. So all these teams in the same division are starting to make moves. What are the Toronto Maple Leafs prepared to do? Seth Jones is now a Florida Panther as well, right? Like we kind of brushed over that over the weekend, but he's now a Florida Panther. So all these teams are getting better. We see it every single year. I feel like the Bruins make trades at the deadline. They're not doing it this year, but usually they acquire players just so other teams in the division don't get them. It's not even that they fit with the team. They just don't want the other teams in the division to get these players. So that's exactly what's happening right now. Again, keep in mind it was an overpay, but other teams in your division are getting better. The East is wide open this year. I think the only team that can honestly compete with the Leafs, again, it's a mental thing. They're going to have to get over the hump. They absolutely have to do that. We have yet to see that. But on paper, the only team that I think can compete with this Leafs team this year is the Washington Capitals. So the East is wide open to me. Why not go out and do something that actually makes a difference? But all signs are pointing to Brad Treliving either not doing anything or doing something very minor.
Yeah, and it's not a great sign. And fans are a little bit concerned. You see this here from Nick D'Souza. Add to the deadline, Florida, Seth Jones, Tampa Bay, obviously a couple great players we just discussed. Time for Leafs management to step up. And as it pertains to stepping up, we see some new reports here. The over-under for new players brought in by Brad Treliving at the deadline is set at 2.5. The Leafs are also looking to add a winger with scoring touch and a defenseman to bolster the blue line. That's the first priority and likely the first domino to fall, determining what assets and cap space remain. The Leafs are going to focus on Braden Shen and to a lesser extent Scott Laughton, but Treliving is carefully weighing the cost. Could Gourde? Nope. And Tanev come over in the same package? Nope, not anymore. That's not going to happen. But Braden Shen now, the focus has started to shift a little bit to Braden Shen, simply because, Scott Laughton, Braden Shen, those are the two guys available. And news also just came out that there was 50% retained in the Yanni Gourde trade from the Kraken side, which makes the deal a little bit easier to swallow if you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, but they don't care about their picks. See here, Seattle gets a first-round pick in 26, first round in 27, Toronto second, and another player. So it is an interesting one, and as it pertains to Braden Shen now, he would be the guy that would match up the best with the big moves that the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning made. But the question then becomes, Is that even something that's reasonable and feasible at this juncture for the Toronto Maple Leafs? I'm not entirely sure, although they're also in on Scott Laughton, which it's starting to scare me that they might just go ahead. I could see a world where they go ahead and say, okay, fine, we're going to give up our 2026 first, and they'll go out and get Scott Laughton, who I almost would have preferred Yanni Gourde, though some people are preferring Scott Laughton.
I'd be fine with a first round pick for Scott Laughton. I have to be honest. In this market, based on what we just saw, right, and seen the last couple of days, I would be okay with a first round pick for Scott Laughton. But I'm not okay with Fraser Minten for Scott Laughton because you know what you have in Fraser Minten. So obviously that's what the Flyers want. So it seems like the Leafs have, with this new report, have not pivoted. They didn't pivot or anything. I think that they've been in on Braden Shen the entire time since he's become available. But it seems like they're putting a lot of focus into that. But we've heard that the package that the Leafs offered wasn't enough, and that the St. Louis Blues are basically saying, if we're going to give up on our goaltender, by the way, Jordan Binnington is in rumors as well, if we're not with the Leafs, but if we're going to give up our goaltender and our captain as to be worthwhile, or we're just going to keep them, right? That's kind of their mindset right now because there's term on those contracts as well, which could be attractive for certain teams. So I think that the Leafs, the package wasn't good enough. We've heard that the ask was very high. I just don't know about Braden Shen. I think he would help you, but it depends what the package actually is. I would like to see what that actually looks like. But the Leafs have to do something at this point. It looks like they're going to have to sell. They're going to have to sell, or not sell, sorry, but,
Settle.
settle for, trading away. That's a better word. Yeah. Trading away one of their high-end prospects or a first round pick. They're going to have to do it. Look at teams like Tampa. I mean, they believe that they can win the Stanley Cup, right? And when you look at the roster on paper, I feel like the Leafs should beat them, but you never know, right? So they believe that they can win. Other teams are improving, like the Florida Panthers. There's no way the Leafs can let this deadline come and go without making a move. And if you make a move that, if it's like a Luke Cunnin for me, that does not move the needle whatsoever. There's no point in making that move.
Yeah, it's we're getting into scary hours a little bit. Another thing that's been brought up recently is, of course, the Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen package. That would maybe be something that the Leafs could pursue. Obviously, we know they're heavily involved in a defenseman, and I think the defenseman market, is more favorable to buyers because there's not a lot of buyers out there that actually need a defenseman compared to forwards. So I think you get a defenseman much cheaper because there's a lot of teams that are selling as it pertains to, average defenseman, which is all the Leafs really need. They're not going for a high-end defenseman. And Seth Jones, the highest-end one, was off the board and is off the board now, Maybe a package of Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen could make some sense if you want to give up some of the things. And ultimately, it's going to be interesting. Toronto remains reluctant to trade next year's first, so they have to decide if including Minten and possibly more in a package deal makes sense. Acquiring both players would mean taking on an $8.1 million hit. Given this, it's unlikely that deal to happen. Remember, that was a report that recently came out, so it's going to be interesting. We're going to keep you guys up to date with all the latest news. The Leafs play tonight. It's going to be a crazy game. They play super late against Vegas, a very good team. They need to win that game, but all eyes, at least for us fans, of course, are on the game, but around what Brad Treliving is going to do now to step up to the dish after both the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning teams either tied currently with the Panthers or right behind them on their tail, who previously won 8 straight games before their other game. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Let us know what your thoughts are. Cheers.